if the woman's looking after the child, then it's the man's responsibility to go out and get money. I think that's where my train of thought.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. But there needs to be a conversation about it. It shouldn't just be an automatic assumption that a woman will stay at home and care for the child. Right. Because what if the woman wants to, or what if the man wants to do that?
Yeah.
You see how it's always relegated to the woman's choice whether she wants to go out and even when we have this conversation, we're mainly talking about women here. When equally it is also a man's choice. He might want to stay home and be with the child, but that's we kind of don't think about it like that. We take it for granted that the man will want to go out and do all this stuff, and it's the woman who's sort of being the one that's changing it up. And I think that's an assumption that's sort of misogynistic inherently, right? Because we automatically assume the woman is going to be the one to stay home and care for the child rather than the man. I think that's just the result of 2,000 years of this being fed down our throats, that the woman's going to stay home. But if you look at historical views of women, right, it's not always been like that. I don't know if you know this, but if you know this reference, but there's this book by Bessie Friedan in the 1960s and late 50s rather, studying housewives, and she found the majority of them were pretty depressed because they couldn't live up to this idealized standard of the American housewife. Because I don't know, I think to some extent, I'm not saying now, and I'm not making this a general critique of women who choose to stay home and be housewives, but I think through history the assumption that women have to be housewives and then being that means that their personality is slightly eroded, and it becomes, your personality and your identity becomes that of service, that of I'm a wife, I'm a mother. We didn't have the freedom to choose back then to the same extent as we do now. And even then, it's the woman who's going out of the way to change, the ideal. Do you see what I mean? I mean, it's quite convoluted what I'm trying to say, I think. I haven't really thought this through.
Are there any statistics on that, or statistics on that in the modern day of what the perspective is on being a housewife or whatever, and how that affects their their emotional state? Because I'll be very interested if there's a paper on that from, like you said, there was a book written in the 50s or 60s. That'd be a very, very interesting paper to read.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I mean, I've got quotes from it, but in the mid-50s, 60% of American women dropped out to focus on their marriages because they thought, either they wanted to get married really young, or because they thought, college education would be a barrier to getting married.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I mean there? I mean, obviously there's no, I don't have the statistics for how many women were depressed back then. That'd be a pretty hard thing to find, I think, but...
I'll add a little bit more of why I thought that way. I think the woman kind of looking after the kid a bit more stems from kind of it being maybe slightly more their decision to be the one actually giving birth. I think maybe women have slightly more decision because it's their body to have a kid. And I also want to add as well that the housewife isn't kind of something that how women have been historically as kind of a limited housewife as their role. I think that can be a bit more different now, with kind of the more of the idea that they can take it easy and take the time to nurture their child. And
but I think even that can be debated. I don't think it is easy. I don't think it is taking it easy to be looking after multiple people at once, because you're always the one that's relegated to the side. It's a role of service, essentially.
When I said take it easier, I mean not having to kind of work as well and put the trousers on and go and
I know, I'm not trying to argue with you, but it is work in itself, right?
Yeah,
and I just don't think it's respected to the same extent.
No, which is so bad, isn't it? I mean, if anything, it's more important. I mean, from my personal perspective, the most important purpose in your life, whether you're male, female, or whatever, is having your own family, having children, nurturing your children to be great individuals that they want to pursue. And so it pisses me off. And I think another point, this is a personal opinion that I don't know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on. I don't think a man could do as good of a job as as a parent as a mother can. I think that's just how it is. There's a
I don't know. I think if you put your mind to it, you can take on that role. Children who have only fathers, most of the time, they turn out fine, and vice versa with mothers, single mothers. No,
that's true. I mean, what are you basing that on? Like, I think the data is clear that like nuclear families of both a mother and father is such a better nurturing environment for the child. And just a father, I don't know. I'd be interested if there are studies that have shown that it's the same, because that will be a great indicator in this. I don't have any.
But the notion of the nuclear family, right, is that the woman is the housewife and the man goes out to work, right?
Not necessarily.
And there's not really. I think that is what a nuclear family is. No, the happy-go-lucky image of a white family, a girl and a boy, daughter and son. The woman's the housewife. The man's going out to work. And I don't know why. High-pressure job.
No, well, that's not how I think about it. I don't know why race has come into it either. The way I see it is,
the notion of the nuclear family, right, throughout history has been that. You can look at images from America in the 1950s and 60s, in Germany, here.
Mm-hmm. But that
it is a historical thing, right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's just like our idea of like, The Simpsons. You got Homer and Marge and the two kids and that's just how sort of the family dynamic is showed in media and things. I'm thinking of, you have a father figure and a mother figure. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have the two nurturing parents that do different things, that have different roles. I think we should value that rather than sort of criticizing it and seeing it as restricting. Now, if a woman wants to embody the more father parts of raising a child, well, that's great, and vice versa, that's great. But we need the both. We need the two.
Is your definition of the more fatherly parts of raising a child being simply having a job? Because if it is that,
you cut out a second.
This is the point I've been making throughout.
You cut out a second there. Was it about?
Is your notion? It was about if your notion of the fatherly figure is that just literally having a job?
No. So we looked at this. We looked at this. There's data that shows that the father figure takes part in a level of play with the child that has a level of cognitive demand that is different to like the nurturing care of the mother. It's like the stretching the child's physical, psychological, maybe even emotional capacity for them to then grow. There was this whole study on it. I mean, maybe you could argue, it's a study from the 70s or 80s or whatever, and that's like promoting this narrative that you disagree with wholeheartedly, and that's maybe a fair point to make. But I don't see the father's role as just like get a job and make money. And actually, like, I just from a personal perspective, I've lived with a mostly absent father throughout my whole life, and I've had to look elsewhere to find a father figure in mentors that I found through my sport or in people's books that I've read and things like that, rather than saying, right, mum, can you provide these masculine traits that I need to live up to? Because that's not in her. That's again putting a sort of constraint on her, right, mum, you have to teach your son ways about being a good man. Well, no, that's not her responsibility. She's thinking about too much anyway, because she's a single mother of 2 disabled children. She's got too much on her plate. And so I've had to look elsewhere for my father figures. That's why I'm so close with my granddad, or I'm so close with one of my sporting mentors, and it's a different role.
But if they're simply figures, right? Can they not be embodied by anyone? I mean, if a woman has more masculine traits, could they not be that father figure? I mean, following on that, what do you think about gay couples, be it lesbian or gay, raising children? How do they then embody the masculine and feminine traits?
It's a very interesting point, and I think the overarching answer is I don't know. But I'm interested by it. I'm hugely interested by it. But I don't 100% agree that we can say it'll be the exact same. Now, it could be good. It could be great. You can nurture that child to a great life. But is it the same? No. Is that a bad thing? Maybe not. I don't know. It's a very interesting topic of discussion. Because I do think about it from my own perspective and go, okay, if my mum was a lesbian and there was another female that had more sort of masculine energy from my own definition, would I then get the same masculine role model figure from that person? But it's an interesting thought process, for sure.